All right, we are live here on YouTube. Let's talk about Lovie Smith being shown the door by the Houston Texans. Plenty to get to. Get in the comments. We'll get to your questions. We'll get to your comments. We'll get to your coach suggestions. We might even have some very fun special guests stop by. The Houston Texans wasting no time. No time wasting by the Houston Texans. Lovie Smith, you're out of here. You win a game you weren't supposed to win, you're out of here. See you later, Lovie Smith. You have a worse record than David Culley. After a year, you're out of here. Nick Caserio not waiting around at all to get Lovie Smith out of town and to start the search for the next Texans head coach. This is the right move for the Houston Texans. Lovie Smith did not look like the type of guy that was going to be a long-term answer for the Houston Texans in the middle of this year. It became apparent towards the back end of this year, Lovie Smith wasn't a long-term answer and shouldn't be considered as the long-term answer for the Houston Texans. You can't have a coach who's stubborn, set in his ways, and not forward-thinking coaching this organization right now. Not when you have a pick that is so high. Lovie Smith was a positive hire when he was hired because most people, myself included, believe the organization was going to hire Josh McCown. And Lovie Smith had an opportunity this year with an offensive coordinator that most people were excited about, with a quarterback that a lot of people were okay with getting a second opportunity to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, and it fell apart. And it fell apart real fast. Davis Mills wasn't any good. Pep Hamilton was a poor offensive coordinator, and Lovie Smith's defense wasn't any good. This team was more talented than when David Culley coached it, and it performed worse on a regular basis. On a regular basis, it performed worse. It was more talented when David Culley coached it, and it was more talented than when David Culley coached it, and they performed worse. It's a bad deal. Bad deal by Lovie Smith. It was likely, when we all look back at it, and as you fire a guy after 1 year, it was a bad hire. It was a bad hire by Nick Caserio and the Houston Texans. Now, again, a lot of people, and myself included in that moment, thought it was an okay hire because it wasn't Josh McCown. I'm sitting here wondering if Josh McCown would have done a better job than Lovie Smith this year. If Josh McCown would have done a better job than Lovie Smith coaching the Houston Texans this year. And I was so vehemently against the idea of Josh McCown being the coach of this team. I was so against that idea. And I liked the pivot to Lovie Smith. I preferred at the time to open up the coaching search again, talk to Jonathan Gannon again, talk to DeMeco Ryans, talk to a bunch of more candidates. At the time, you were the only team that was going to be hiring. You could have talked to anybody you wanted. Anybody. No, they just pivoted to Lovie in-house. It didn't go well. It was a bad football team this year. It's a bad football team. And I appreciate what Lovie Smith did. He took a very unenviable position, and he did the best that he could. That is the best Lovie Smith could do. Maybe here or there, a game changes here or there. But for the most part, that was the best Lovie Smith could do. And he's fired. Now Nick Caserio gets the opportunity to hire a new coach. The Texans have announced that. Nick Caserio has given a statement about that. Okay, the team has announced that Lovie Smith is out, and the team has said Cal McNair and Nick Caserio are going to get the opportunity to hire the next coach. So Cal McNair will work with Nick Caserio, who is now the de facto ruler of the organization. There's no Jack Easterby to handle those things, and from the business side, it stays separate. But Nick Caserio is right below Cal McNair and calling every shot about the organization right now. There's no Jack Easterby to handle those duties. It's all Nick's show. And so if you believe in Nick Caserio, then you probably have high hopes for this coaching search. Time and time again, though, Nick Caserio has done things that it makes it tough to believe in Nick Caserio. Okay? So that's where we are right now. And let's get to some of your comments. Let's get to some of the things that the folks want to talk about. Let's start talking about some coaching candidates that we believe Nick Caserio's going to go after. I'm going to do my best to get to some of these comments here in the course of this live. So bear with me. It's my first time live, my first time with the technology, but I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. BG Ramirez, get rid of Pep Hamilton too. Pep's gone. Pep's gone. I would expect most of this coaching staff to get cleaned out. There's a handful of guys that have a good argument to come back, but I would expect most of this coaching staff to get cleared out. I would be interested to see what Frank Ross the special teams coach does. He may have an opportunity to coach special teams elsewhere. That was one of the best units from a special teams standpoint in the entire NFL. The punter's an alternate for the Pro Bowl. The kicker's an alternate for the Pro Bowl. John Weeks is really good. They've had really good coverage all year. And the special teams stole some hidden yards for the Houston Texans this year. And so I'd be interested to see if Frank Ross, the special teams coach, is indeed back. Pep Hamilton, a lot of this coaching staff, they're out of here. Houston Oilers says, bad hire, good fire. Yep. I mean, nobody really wanted to see Lovie Smith with a second year, including, it seems, Cal McNair and Nick Caserio. And it is so rare to have coaches not even make it to Monday. He got fired when he landed. They must have had his stuff packed up at the office. They must have had somebody go into his office and pack it up in a box, handed it to him out the door. If he got off the bus first, somebody else had to scan him in. I mean, he didn't even – I mean, they literally might have fired Lovie Smith on the plane, or at least made the decision or had the conversation. Hell, they might have fired him in the middle of the game. Just when did they tell Lovie? When did they tell Lovie? TJ says, bad process and hire. Didn't love it. Didn't love ending up on Lovie Smith. Was far more intrigued with opening up the coaching search again. And if this thing ends up with Jonathan Gannon, and we'll talk about candidates here in a minute, this thing ends up with Jonathan Gannon again, what was this year for? What was this year for? Okay? Lovie Smith, go back to Chicago where you belong coaching college. I don't know if Lovie Smith's ever going to be a head coach again. He might get some coaching opportunities, some consultant opportunities. I would anticipate that Lovie Smith's head coaching career ended today and that he ended it with a win. So congratulations for him, because it set the Texans back a little bit. Okay, they're not picking number 1 overall, and it could have really drastically changed some things for this organization by Lovie Smith and his team winning that game. Still a Bear at heart. Thank you, Lovie. I mean, he might be the second best Bears coach ever. Lovie Smith's the second best Bears coach in the history of coaching, and he added to his resume with it today. Okay? All right, so let's talk some candidates here, okay? And I'll get to some of your comments, and again, I'm going to try to get to as many as I can here. Let's talk some candidates. All right, number 1, the name you're going to hear the most, defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, Jonathan Gannon. Gannon interviewed last year. If you believe some reports, Gannon was close to getting the opportunity last year. Okay? It seems like they eventually moved on from Gannon, pivoted to Josh McCown, ultimately decided against Josh McCown, and jumped over and found themselves with Lovie Smith. So Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles defensive coordinator, is a name that you're going to hear a ton. Here's some unique things about Jonathan Gannon, okay? Gannon spent a couple of years of his career in the front office before he was a coach. He's sort of the reverse Nick Caserio. Caserio was primarily a front office guy and then had a little dabble in coaching. He was the wide receivers coach for New England for a year. Ironically, one of the best offensive years in New England's history. And then Caserio was back in the front office. Gannon flips it. Gannon was a coach, spent a couple of years in the front office with the Rams, and then got back into coaching. So he's kind of the reverse Caserio. So both guys have done both. Not an extreme amount, but both guys have done both. So Jonathan Gannon is a name you're going to hear a ton. Is a name you're going to hear a ton associated with the Texans. You've already seen that name floated out here tonight. You've heard about it for a couple of weeks now. Heck, we talked about it on the radio show that I do on ESPN 97.5 weekdays, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., the Wheelhouse. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. There was a report that Jonathan Gannon is the likely coach if Lovie Smith gets fired. So that's the first name you're going to hear a bunch about. The Eagles, depending on who you talk to, statistically best or second best defense in total yards allowed this season. Okay, set a new franchise record for sacks in a season. And they don't have like just some amazing knockdown, drag-out defensive lineman. Like they don't have a J.J. Watt. They don't have a Myles Garrett. They don't have a Bosa brother. They've got a bunch of guys that get it done. And so pretty impressive defense. At different times this year, Philadelphia fans have been pretty disappointed with Jonathan Gannon. Okay, so Jonathan Gannon's been sometimes disappointing for Philly fans, but ultimately the results, especially what happens in these playoffs, you would think, are going to play a little part in Jonathan Gannon's candidacy. So that's the first name we're going to talk about. Jonathan Gannon, Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator. Okay? The next name, BG Ramirez has put it up. A bunch of other people have put it up. DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco Ryans is the defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. He's also one of the greatest Houston Texans players of all time. DeMeco Ryans is going to be a candidate that a lot of people would get excited about. DeMeco Ryans is going to be the type of candidate that brings a fan base together. And DeMeco's a damn good coach. He is a fast riser. Learned under Robert Saleh, took over when Saleh left. They're the number one defense in the NFL at different times this year. They and the Eagles are number one and number two in total defense, I believe, heading into this week. So Robert Saleh turned it over to DeMeco Ryans, and they still were very, very good at defense. That's a testament to the players that are there in San Fran, but it's also a testament that with DeMeco, or also a testament to DeMeco Ryans and how well he's coached up that team. Now, you will hear people say DeMeco Ryans doesn't want to go here. To my knowledge, DeMeco Ryans has never said, I don't want to coach the Houston Texans, to the best of my knowledge. Okay? And I understand that DeMeco Ryans made the Houston Texans a party to a lawsuit a few years ago. And he wanted, I believe, $10 million, which was a reasonable amount of money to request because he thought he could have played some more football in his professional football career, but he hurt his knee or hurt his leg on the turf at NRG Stadium. He blamed the turf at that time, or the field at that time at NRG Stadium. So he basically stepped in a crack and it blew his leg out. Okay? I don't remember the ultimate outcome of that lawsuit. I do know there was some speculation that at different times it was going to get thrown out. I don't know. Here's what I could tell you. Everybody's got a price. The $1 million man, Ted DiBiase, for all my wrestling fans in here, stand up, okay? The $1 million man, Ted DiBiase, everybody's got a price. If DeMeco wanted a $10 million back then and he didn't get it, find a way to get him a little extra cash here, okay? DeMeco Ryans is going to be a very attractive candidate to a lot of teams. The Cardinals should talk to DeMeco Ryans if they fire Cliff Kingsbury. Washington Commanders should talk to DeMeco Ryans. The Indianapolis Colts should talk to DeMeco Ryans. There's a lot of teams that should talk to DeMeco Ryans. The Houston Texans have to talk to DeMeco Ryans. Even if he doesn't want the job, do what you need to do to convince this fan base. Do what you need to do to convince this fan base that one of the legendary players in this franchise's history, who is now a coach and is now one of the most sought-after coordinators in the coaching cycle, do what you can to convince this fan base that you at least turn that rock over. Please, do what you can. DeMeco, as far as guys that coach defense, he's my preference. You're not going to hear me bring up a lot of defensive coordinators. I really don't have an extreme desire to have a lot of defensive coordinators associated with this team. Okay? I would think DeMeco Ryans has a connection to a bunch of different coaching staffs. Mike McDaniel's coaching staff in Miami, picking somebody off from there. Obviously somebody in Kyle Shanahan's tree somewhere. Maybe somebody in LA with the Rams because Shanahan and McVay are all kind of tied together. Okay? But DeMeco Ryans is a fascinating candidate. He's a very exciting candidate. And I don't believe DeMeco Ryans has some sort of just massive ego where he has to be hiring his own staff with no input. It's only his guys and things like that. Like Nick Caserio can help you. Cal McNair and Nick Caserio can say, we got a big checkbook. Who do you want? What quarterback coach do you want? What offensive coordinator do you want? Or who do you want to be the offensive coordinator? What former offensive coordinator who's out of football right now do you want? You want Frank Wright? All right, Frank's going to be expensive, but we'll write the check. Let's go. You want Brian Johnson, who's the quarterback's coach in Philadelphia? You want Brian Johnson, the quarterback's coach in Philadelphia, to be your offensive coordinator? Well, he's highly sought after, but let's go. Brian Johnson, the quarterback coach in Philadelphia, he was the OC at Florida when Kyle Trask threw 40-plus touchdowns. Very interesting guy. Would likely move up in the Eagles organization if one of their offensive guys left. DeMeco Ryans can go and hire somebody really important and really impressive if the Texans will open the checkbook for him. Or if he has a guy in mind, let him bring him. Let him bring him, okay? DeMeco Ryans is certainly a candidate. Slim Hardaway says, DeMeco is a fandom hire. We need an offensive mind. We'll talk about offensive minds here in just a second. And I've seen a lot of people Seen a lot of people throw this guy's name in there, and I want to get somebody in there. I apologize. I know a lot of people brought this guy's name up. Jordan Williams says Ben Johnson. If you don't know who Ben Johnson is the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. Young guy, exciting guy, has sort of revived Jared Goff's career, turned him into a capable quarterback. They've got the NFL rushing touchdown leader on their team in Jamal Williams. DeAndre Swift is another player that they have there. They've got a young standout wide receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown. And they've got some very impressive pieces in that organization. They've started to put some things together. My concern with Ben Johnson here, okay, and he's a good name. He's an interesting name. My concern with Ben Johnson is how many years has he done it? How many years has he done it? Because he's been the OC for the Lions for just this year. Like your resume is short from a play calling and offensive success scenario. Got a little McVay to him, to be honest. Okay? He's 36 years old. Hell, McVay was like already a Super Bowl champ at 36 or whatever it was, but got a little McVay to him. He's 36 years old. Used to coach tight ends. Okay? Used to coach tight ends. Now he's the OC in Detroit, and the Lions have had some really impressive offensive performances. Now, some of that, the Lions have just had to have impressive offensive performances because they stunk to high heaven on defense a couple of times this year. Okay? Former Texan Aaron Glenn's their defensive coordinator. They stunk on defense a couple of times. Here's my concern with Ben Johnson. I'd love to see a little bit more. But if you get him in the room, talk to him. Talk to him. You can talk to anybody. You can talk to anybody. Talk to him. Talk to Ben Johnson if you want to. Okay? Talk to Ben Johnson. And if you feel like he blows your socks off, boom, hire Ben Johnson. It's real simple. It's real simple. You got to have an impressive list. Okay? The list the first time Caserio hired a coach is okay. All right? They talked to Matt Eberflus. They talked to Eric Bieniemy. They talked to Jim Caldwell. They talked to Leslie Frazier. They talked to David Culley. David Culley ended up as the coach. The second coaching search around it sucked. It's Lombardi's grandson, who was the OC in L.A. with the Chargers. It's Hines Ward. It was Josh McCown. It was Jonathan Gannon, Brian Flores. And then they settled on Lovie Smith, who didn't even hire in the process. Talk to Ben Johnson. It is worth a conversation. Oh, by the way, his season's over. You want to talk to Ben Johnson? You talk to him real soon. Talk to him real fast. Okay? Jonathan Gannon might play for a Super Bowl. Might be a while before he's in the building. Might be February before he's the coach in the building. DeMeco Ryans might play for a Super Bowl. Might be February before he's in the building. Not saying that you make or don't make a hire based on that. Not saying that at all. It's just something to keep in mind. It's just something to keep in mind as you're going through these minds. Who's available now? Who's available soon? Who's available a long time away because their team's playing for a damn Super Bowl? Now, don't get me wrong. The 49ers, who were the last team to go one and done, new coach, they went Jim Tomsula out of there, Chip Kelly out of there, and then offensive coordinator from the Super Bowl and Kyle Shanahan. It's worked out great for the 49ers. Played in a couple Super Bowls. Shanahan's one of the best offensive minds in football. They might win the damn Super Bowl. Okay? Might win the damn Super Bowl with a Mr. Irrelevant, 256th pick in the draft. Okay? Shanahan's a freak. Go find a Shanahan. Go find a freak offensive coordinator. Okay? All right, so we've talked about Jonathan Gannon. We've talked about DeMeco Ryans. We have talked about Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. I saw somebody put it in here in the comments. Let me see if I can find it here. J.J. Watt. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'd see if J.J. wants a role with the organization. I'm not saying coach, but you want him to be community liaison. You want him to be master of ceremonies. You want him to be culture chief. I don't care. But find a spot for JJ. Also, maybe a one-day contract for him when he retires. All right, here we go. Adam throws it out there. Kellen Moore. Both Cowboys coordinators should be on a lot of people's list. All right, I know the Cowboys are limping to the finish line, and they're limping into the playoffs. Okay, it's one of the best offenses in football the past 2 years. It's one of the best offenses in football the past 2 years. Kellen Moore stuck around when they brought in Mike McCarthy. Runs the offense, one of the best offenses in football the past 2 years. Okay, it was in the conversation for some jobs a year ago. Kellen Moore, that's a name that I would talk to. Former quarterback at Boise State, former NFL backup quarterback. Kellen Moore is certainly a guy that I would think about. They have some of the best offensive stats the past 2 years. They were one of the best offenses in football when Dak came back from his injury. They were one of the best offenses in football when Dak came back from his injury. Okay? I know it limped to the finish line, and it was not great. But that's not all on Kellen Moore. Dan Quinn's the other name there. He's the defensive coordinator. Don't love defensive coaches as much as I love offensive coaches. And I said my defensive preference is DeMeco, Jonathan Gannon, and then basically all the offensive guys. But we're talking about Kellen Moore. He's on the Cowboys, so I want to throw in Dan Quinn there on the Cowboys as well. Dan Quinn has coached a team to a Super Bowl. Okay? And Dan Quinn knows how to hire one hell of a staff. He hired Kyle Shanahan to run his offense, took the career to the next level of Matt Ryan. Dan Quinn knows how to hire a staff. I'd be interested in Dan Quinn. I'd talk to him. Boy, if I was Nick Caserio, I'd be burning up Cal McNair's credit card right now, booking flights. Satellites be linking up. We'd be talking to travel agents on four different phones. I'd look like a rapper in the club with multiple phones up at once. You know, oh, what's that? Hold on. Oh, no, we need Dan Quinn here. No, let's get Kellen Moore in on the next flight. Be talking to everybody. Interview as many people as you want. There's nothing wrong with interviewing a lot of people. Finding out what you like. You don't have to rush this decision. The only time you need to rush is if somebody's hiring your guy. You feel like, damn, I got to have that guy. Somebody's hiring your guy. If somebody's hiring your guy, then you rush it. But you don't have to rush it. You don't have to rush it. All right? You don't have to rush to your guy. All right. Kellen Moore, Dan Quinn, talk to the Cowboys guys. All right? Let's talk about the shop at the top. Let's talk about the most expensive options for the Houston Texans. They're expensive for two different reasons. They're expensive, one, because one's going to cost a draft pick. And they're expensive for the other reason because the guy's just going to be very expensive. Might be the third or fourth highest salary in the NFL from a coaching standpoint. Let's start with the first one. Every team should talk to Sean Payton. Every team should talk to Sean Payton. I was highly critical of the Texans for not talking to Doug Peterson last year. And yes, it takes two to tango. It takes two to tango. You have to have that person want to talk to you. And I would understand why a year ago, Doug Peterson didn't want to talk to this team. There was not a clarity at quarterback. There was not a quarterback that he could work with that's anywhere close to Trevor Lawrence. I don't understand why he didn't want to talk to him. I understand why Sean Payton would not want to talk to the Houston Texans. Ask. All I can say is no. Talk to Sean Payton. Find out what he thinks. You may find out something from Sean Payton in the process of him saying no to you that is important for you to learn about yourself. Everybody needs to be good at self-assessment. I don't believe the Texans have been very good at self-assessment recently. Everybody needs to be good about self-assessment. You can also ask for help. In interviewing Sean Payton, you may be able to find something about yourself that you find important and turn it into a positive in ultimately who you hire. Just because Sean Payton tells you no, it's not the end of the world. Now, if Sean Payton tells you yes, it gets complicated. If Sean Payton tells you yes, it gets really complicated because then you have to trade with the New Orleans Saints. Now, the Saints have given people permission to talk to Sean Payton. The Broncos already talked to him. And as Ian Rappaport laid it out, the only time you get to the point where you're discussing compensation is basically if Payton says yes and the Broncos say yes, and then you talk compensation. But you can talk to Sean Payton in the meantime. Call Kansas City. Ask them, hey, can we interview, not Kansas City, excuse me, New Orleans. Call New Orleans. Can we interview Sean Payton? Yeah, sure. Sure. The Texans have 2 additional first-round picks over the next 2 years. You don't think New Orleans could use a first-round pick? They blew it this year. Their first-round pick's somebody else's first-round pick this year. Okay? They blew it trading up for Chris Olave. So, talk to Sean Payton. You may learn something about your organization. Okay? You may learn something about your organization in the process, and that's the shop at the top guy. That is the most expensive coach the Texans could get, both in paying him the money. Reportedly, Payton had the second highest salary in the NFL behind Bill Belichick when he left the Saints. So he's expensive. And he costs a draft pick. But Sean Payton's won a Super Bowl. He's amazing. He's a very good coach. I've interviewed him in person. He is captivating. Sean Payton, when you sit down with him, and I spent 20 minutes with him at a Super Bowl radio row. He got there early. He talked to us before the interview. He gave us a fantastic interview. Myself, Jake Asman, who's my co-host on the Wheelhouse on ESPN 97.5, 92.5 weekdays, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. on ESPN 97.5. ESPN 97.5 app. Catch us on Twitch as well. He sat down, got there early, talked with me and Jake before, gave us a fantastic interview, and talked with us for 5 minutes after. Those guys have a tight schedule. The entire 20 minutes, Sean Payton was sitting there. He's captivating. We interviewed like 100 people that week. Nobody was as interesting and as captivating as Sean Payton. Martha Stewart came a close second, but we can't make Martha Stewart the head coach of the Houston Texans. We could see Sean Payton be the head coach of the Houston Texans. All right? Make him say no. That's the biggest thing. Other shop at the top. The other shop at the top. Jim Harbaugh. Now, Jim Harbaugh is going to be expensive, but Jim Harbaugh's not coaching Michigan next year. He sent the flare up that I'm coming to the NFL. Somebody's going to hire me. I believe the Colts want a shot at him. I believe the Panthers want a shot at him, even though they're trying to play coy. Oh, yeah, we talked to Jim, but we're just talking. Sure. The Broncos will talk to him if they don't get Sean Payton. Talk to Jim Harbaugh. You may find something that you don't like about old coaches in talking to Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh's fantastic. Obviously, built some impressive offenses with a couple of different quarterbacks, Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick in San Francisco. So two different types of quarterbacks. And if you end up with C.J. Stroud because you don't have the number one overall pick, you think Jim Harbaugh knows a thing or two about C.J. Stroud? Okay? Played him 2 years in a row. Okay? Scouted him for 2 straight years, getting ready to play him in the game. Okay? Harbaugh's teams, too, they were tough as nails. They would bite your nose off in those games. And he helped identify incredible talent. Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman. That's the most underrated linebacker duo in the history of the NFL. Those guys were absolute monsters. Not to mention the various defensive linemen that they just churned in there in Harbaugh's time turned into really impressive defenses. In addition to him and Greg Roman coaching up the offense. Jim Harbaugh is a guy that I would absolutely talk to. Now, again, he may tell you no right off the bat. All you've lost is a phone call. And he may come in and he may act like he's got the job like he did in Minnesota last year, and it may put you off. That's fine. You may learn something about old coaches by talking to Jim Harbaugh. Shop at the top. The top 2 guys. Guy that's gone to a Super Bowl and Jim Harbaugh. Guy that's won a Super Bowl and Sean Payton. Talk to him. All I can tell you is no. You ever taken the pretty girl home from the bar? Well, if you never talked to her, you never took her home from the bar. Okay? You ever won a big hand of blackjack on a big bet? Well, if you didn't make a big bet, you never won. Here's the best thing. It's not like betting on blackjack because there's nothing to lose if they tell you no. You just move on to the next one. It's like in life. Somebody want to be your friend. Somebody want to be your girlfriend. Somebody want to be your boyfriend. You move on to the next one. Move on to the next one. You guys have a lot of comments coming. I'm going to try to get to as many of them as I can. And you put some names out there. Excuse me, I got to get a little bit of water here. All right. We'll get to some more names. So we talked about the 2 young DCs. Jonathan Gannon, who's probably the favorite. I'd put him as the Vegas favorite. DeMeco Ryans, the former Texans legend, now candidate. Okay? There's those 2. All right? The shop at the top guys. Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh. We talked about the Cowboys guys. Kellen Moore, Dan Quinn. Couple of people. Victor, you tossed it up there. Hefe, you tossed it up there. Gridiron Takeover, you tossed it up there. It's a guy by the name of Shane Steichen. If you're unfamiliar with Shane Steichen, here's the important thing to know about Shane Steichen. He's part of that offensive staff in Philadelphia that's been really impressive. Really impressive offensive staff. They took a quarterback in Jalen Hurts that was not thought to be a franchise quarterback and turned him into a franchise quarterback. Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen and Brian Johnson took a quarterback who was not thought to be a franchise quarterback, who played one of the worst games of his life in the playoffs last year against the Buccaneers. And they turned him into a franchise quarterback in an offseason. Now it helps. They got DeMeco Smith, who's awesome. They went and traded for A.J. Brown. They've got maybe the best offensive line in football, if not the best, one of the best offensive lines in football. But for Steichen to have been there as a part of that and call the plays, it's an important aspect of these offensive guys. Ben Johnson calls the plays in Detroit. Steichen calls the plays. We'll get to see other guys that don't call the plays. Not as exciting. But Steichen's on the headset. He's calling in the play. Spider 2 wide banana. Boom, Jalen Hurts, go fix it. Go do it. Shane Steichen is a fascinating name. I know he's my co-host, Brad Kellner's favorite candidate in this coaching cycle. Brad, Jake Asman, who you see in the chat over here, by the way, follow his YouTube channel. He's fantastic. He posts clips from our show. It's the Wheelhouse, weekdays, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 in Houston. We also have the ESPN 97.5 app. Also on this channel, which I'd very much like to subscribe, if you want to hit subscribe down below, on this channel we post clips of that very show. And let me tell you, we're going to have lots to talk about for the next 109 days until the NFL draft. All right? We have lots to talk about for 109 days. So, Shane Steichen is a fascinating candidate. I like Steichen as much as the shop at the top guys. I like Steichen more than Jonathan Gannon. Okay? I like Steichen more than Jonathan Gannon. I believe he'd be one of these young guys that's the coach and also calls his own plays. He'd be the head coach and call his own plays. I like that. I like that. I like that when offensive guys do it. I don't like it when defensive guys do it. I like that the offensive guys. Okay? Steichen would have the headset and he'd call the plays. And I'm assuming he would bring, maybe I'm making a big assumption here, but I'm assuming he'd bring somebody impressive from that Eagles coaching staff. Maybe it's Brian Johnson. Maybe he brings Brian Johnson over, who helped develop Kyle Trask at Florida and could be the offensive coordinator here. Now, Johnson may simply say, well, Steichen's leaving, I'll just be the OC in Philly. That's fine. Somebody else on that Philly staff might be impressive to bring in there. Okay? Somebody else might be impressive on that staff. And so Steichen is a fascinating candidate. The Eagles offensive coordinator, one of the best offenses in football this year. I do wonder how much is Jalen Hurts as a mobile quarterback, and he makes something out of nothing sometimes. I do wonder how often it's, well, A.J. Brown and DeMeco Smith. Oh, and Dallas Goedert. This is a really good tight end, Dallas Goedert. I do wonder, too, how much of it's those guys are just really good and take care of business. And I wonder, too, just if the Eagles' offensive line is just so impressive that they make up for some of the stuff. Now, the Texans, Titus plays better. Laramie stays Laramie. Get some better, play from the guys in the middle. Can have an average offensive line in a hurry. It's not going to be the Eagles. Okay, so Steichen, a little worried about Steichen. I'd rather him than Jonathan Gannon, though. I'd rather him than Jonathan Gannon and I'd rather him than Ben Johnson. Steichen's just got just a tiny bit more to him that I'm impressed with. Turning a, used car and Jared Goff into a better used car, that's pretty impressive. Turning what Jalen Hurts was at the end of last year into what Jalen Hurts is now, which is almost the MVP, that's really good. To be a part of that, to be near that, man, that's really good. That's really good. That's really impressive. And I'd be very excited about Shane Steichen. Okay? All right, so a couple more names that we'll throw in. All right, Jose put it out there. What about Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan? Interesting name. Been a part of the Joe Burrow experience. Been a part of getting Burrow ready for the NFL. Been a part of an impressive offense in Cincinnati. And so I'd be interested in seeing what Callahan can bring to the table and put together a young, forward-thinking staff. My worry about Callahan, he doesn't call the plays. Zach Taylor calls the plays. Now, Kevin O'Connell didn't call the plays in L.A. He got the job with Minnesota, and the offense has been, pretty good at different times. So Kevin O'Connell, he didn't call the plays and got the job in Minnesota. So it's not a prerequisite, but I like a bunch of different guys, specifically even defensive guys who bring their own play caller more than Callahan. All right. But the success that the Bengals have had and the success that they've had coaching up Joe Burrow and eliminating some of the things out of his game that hasn't been good early on and taking it to the next level. And part of that's just Burrow's really good. But Callahan certainly deserves a little bit of credit for that as well. All right. So a couple of people have thrown in Ben Johnson. Now, we hit Ben Johnson a little bit earlier. I like Ben Johnson more than Callahan. I don't like Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator, as much as I like Shane Steichen, the offense coordinator for the Eagles, and the two defensive guys. I like Gannon and Ryans better than Ben Johnson. All right, Byron Leftwich. I think the offense in Tampa took a huge step back this year. Leftwich is there, and he's going to get blamed for it because they're not going to blame Tom Brady. They're not going to blame a lot of the injuries. Leftwich, it takes a little hit here. The Curtis Podcast Network has thrown Byron Leftwich in there a couple of times. So Leftwich is a name that I probably wouldn't consider. I probably wouldn't talk to. Okay. Sean McVay is apparently leaving LA. Yes, he is. He's leaving LA because he doesn't want to rebuild. The Texans are rebuilding. The Texans are rebuilding. Sean McVay is not an option. I actually believe Sean McVay is going to end up as the head coach of the Chargers. The Chargers are going to trade for him. That'd be my thought on where McVay is going to end up. And Leftwich isn't any good, so we can get him cheap. Money's no object. Cal McNair is a gazillionaire. The Texans are the sixth most valuable NFL franchise, according to Forbes. Money is no option. Cal McNair just wrote a $22 million check to David Kelly last year. He wrote another big check to Lovie Smith this year. I don't care how much these guys cost. I don't care if this coach wants to be the third or fourth highest paid coach in all of football. Okay? I don't care if that's the case. Pay them. If you find your guys, pay them. If you like the guy, pay him. Don't let money stand in the way. All right, somebody on the YouTube comments, Press Taylor. Jose thrown in OC, the Jaguars, Press Taylor. No thanks. And, the Jaguars have been nice, sure. Doug Peterson gets a lot of credit for that. All right, if you guys follow the Wheelhouse, you follow me. If you watch this channel a little bit, you'll know this guy. Boom, Jake Asman's in here.
Hey.
I do this right? This live thing's fascinating.
Yeah, I was in the chat making sure you were handling things appropriately, and it seems like you're doing a great job here. You got over 200-something people watching right now? Well done.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it here. All right, so we went through some of the candidates. Let's go back to it. Lovie Smith's fired. We've talked about it for 3 months, 2 months. Lovie Smith was gone. Texans don't even make it to Monday, and they fire him today. Did he get fired on the plane? You think he got fired on the plane?
I texted someone that was on the plane, and I said, just curious, what time did you guys land? This person wrote to me, 7:45. So, I mean, it's basically like they landed, probably got back to NRG, and then that's when they sat down and told Lovie, we'll see you later.
They must have had his desk packed up in a box. Ready for him.
They had the statements ready to go. The Texans social media team had the graphic. Thank you, Lovie. By the way, why are we Mike Florio, who comes on with us every Wednesday to the Wheelhouse audience, why are we thanking people that just got fired? It doesn't make any. Thank you, Lovie, for what? Blowing the number 1 pick in the draft today? What are we thanking him for?
Thank you for not blowing it anymore. Thank you for not beating the Colts week 1, I guess.
My God, just unreal, man. I will say, by doing it first, now when all the other firings happen, like the Texans will kind of be in the back seat because they did it in the middle of the Sunday night game. Everyone was watching.
You get churned out of the news cycle. You got Cliff Kingsbury might get fired tomorrow. You got Ron Rivera might get fired tomorrow. You got Sean McVay might just quit. He might just quit on the Rams, which is such a bitch move. We'll have to talk about that on the show tomorrow at length over the course of this week. He's just going to quit on the Rams because they're not going to be any good next year. Screw you, McVay.
He won a ring. He wants to go and hang out with his hot wife. I don't blame him.
Yeah, but and like you got a bunch of like New Orleans might fire Dennis Allen. Like there are 4 to 5 different things that are going to happen that are just going to push the Texans down on the bottom of the news cycle. So yeah, firing on Friday night. Sunday night. I'm a big fan of that.
Unbelievable. Yeah, like I'm not surprised, but it's just I'm still not over what happened during this game today at the end. What a wild sequence of events, and then the statement from Cal McNair clearly reads that it's going to be Caserio that's going to be having like a major say in this decision here. I heard you talking about this. My biggest thing. The Texans need to operate like a real franchise now. Enough of the gimmicks. No more interviewing Hines Ward or Josh McCown. Hire real candidates. You have the first firing of the news cycle here. They should hit the ground running tomorrow, identifying legit candidates.
If they don't interview if the total number of interviews, when we look back in 10 years, doesn't include 2 Lombardi trophies, I'll be furious. Like, and you can knock out one of those by interviewing Sean Payton. Like, just interview somebody who's going to be awesome. I don't care if he ends up at another team. Just interview somebody who's going to be cool and good and fun.
Show the fan base that you're serious about getting this right, because you were non-serious with your most recent 2 hires. It's just they have to start. I heard some of the names you were talking about. They should call this, the Saints and get permission for Payton, even if he says no. At least that would show me you're trying. But I wonder. Like the stigma of Nick Caserio, are they going to be able to interview top of the line guys? You would hope the answer is obviously yes, but then I'm reading Aaron Wilson's reports today, and it sounds like Jonathan Gannon has like an inside track. And Cody, would it not be ridiculous if they hired Jonathan Gannon when they could have hired him last year? And a big reason why they don't have the number 1 pick is because Lovie Smith didn't give a damn about the number 1 pick and wasn't on board with tanking. So you could have, if Gannon was your coach, they could have told Gannon, hey, don't win the game today, and then you have your guy long term.
I'll be pretty angry with it ending up being Jonathan Gannon, and here's why. It will feel like you have just kept the rebuild in neutral for 2 years. It'd be 2 years of neutral, and you didn't even get a number 1 overall selection. Like you want, like I don't think people really are like. I want people to understand this. They won 2 games at the back end of their schedule. 1 in each year that kept them from having back-to-back number 1 overall picks. Like they beat the Chargers last year. If they lost that game, they pick Aiden Hutchinson number 1 or Trevon Walker. Maybe they screw that up. I don't know. And if they lose today, they'd pick number 1 and they could have just picked Bryce Young. Like imagine if Bryce Young and Aiden Hutchinson were the 2 faces of this franchise. Come on.
That's why sometimes when you win, you actually lose, as we talked about all week. I mean, we all saw this coming. We did so many segments this week on radio. Like we called it. We knew with the second I saw that the Bears were sitting down fields to play Peterman, I'm like, they're going for the tankathon here. And the Texans need to counter, and they didn't do anything. They're playing Brandon Cooks today. He's having a great game. Davis Mills, who has been anemic in 2-minute offense all years, converting on 4th and 20s. Like trust me, as a Jet fan, I can relate to the Texan fan. Like the Jordan Akins catch is now is the equivalent of the Frank Gore touchdown run that prevented the Jets from getting Trevor Lawrence in 2020. Like I felt like I was reliving my nightmare today watching this game.
I'll have a I'll have a shop at the top sign. I don't know if I have enough time to get the shirts done for shop at the top, but we may do a big whiteboard that's just a shop at the top.
Someone in here commented, if you get BK on, I'll do a shot. The problem is Victor Diaz. The problem is, Victor, if we ask BK to come on, he wouldn't see the text message till like 3 days from now.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody said Cody has eggshell walls. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I'm not well lit, but they're nice. They're nice. My condo's nice. I don't have a fancy banner yet, like Jake. Maybe I'll get me a little fancy banner made up like Jake.
It does look like you're just like behind like a white wall. That's it. Like it looks like you might be in like a prison cell. I can't tell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought about putting something funky behind me, like a picture of Lovie, just like sad.
Thank you, Lovie. I love that. Thank you, Lovie. We're thanking the guy.
Hold on. Let's play a game. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this thank you, Lovie thing. We'll see if I can find it. Yeah, dropping a thank you, Lovie. I guess you have to say that,
why? I don't understand. The best is like Lovie was trying to act like today, like he was coming back. He's like, oh yeah, I expect to be back. And it's like, meanwhile, there was an NFL Network story that came out yesterday that listed like 3 of the candidates the Texans plan to speak to.
When he said I expect to be back, did they ask him if he got to fly back with the team? Is that what he meant?
I can confirm he was on the plane. I
expect to be back on the team plane here. Yeah, I do. All right, this present thing is not as easy as you would think it is here. All right, here we go. Is this working?
It is. Yep, there it is. Thank you, Lovie.
Thank you, Lovie. Thank you, Coach Smith. Thank you for costing us the number 1 overall pick. Thank you. Also, shout out to KPRC, our friends over at KPRC Channel 2 here in Houston.
Oh, you're on TV right now?
Yeah, I'm on TV right now. They had me on talking about the number 2 overall pick, the win today, which actually felt like a loss, and all this other fun stuff. And
what a weird camera shot this is right now. You guys are sitting in like a conference room. Looks like it's a board meeting, not a TV show.
Yeah, no, Randy was holding court. We were talking all sorts of fun stuff on there. So, no, it was great. I love the guys over at KPRC. Had plenty of fun there, and we'll catch that segment on the YouTube. We're doing this obviously live here. I'm sure they'll put that on their YouTube on the internet and stuff like that. All right, so Lovie cost them today. The result of today didn't matter. He was getting fired anyway.
Agreed.
I do wonder if winning today advanced the timeline to the point where, like, I'm done with you. Get out. Like, see you later.
He knew he was gone, which is why he went for 2. This is the same coach that chose to play for a tie in week 1. But today, he's going out there and he's going for the win. Like, Lovie completely contradicted everything he had done as a coach until this game today, which is the ultimate sign that he knew he was getting canned, which is why he played for the win today, which I don't blame him, but it's just unreal it played out that way.
He is king contradiction. Okay, Bill O'Brien's king jackass, and Lovie Smith is king contradiction. Okay, he would contradict himself in the same press conference. He would talk about, we're not talking about past weeks, and the next question would be about his defense. He'd be like, well, the past few weeks we've been really good on defense, and it is just so Houston Texans to start the year with a tie that feels like a loss and finish the year with a win that feels like a loss.
It's a horrible feeling, man. And the tie is the reason why they don't have the first pick, though. Think about it. Because of the tie, the Bears, because they had less wins, or less losses, I should say. Or more losses, I should say.
More losses.
More losses than the Texans because of the tie. They got the first pick, which is just insane. They don't deserve the first pick. I'm mad that the Bears had the first pick. Like all year I hear about how great of a season Justin Fields is having, this and that. So how the hell do they finish with the first pick then? That doesn't make any sense.
They hired the coach. The coach's defense. They had one of the worst defenses in football.
How great was Justin Fields' season, though, if they had the first pick? Like, the Bears don't deserve the first pick. That's also nonsense.
Also, if you have $100 million in cap space, you should be disqualified from getting the first pick.
They have $100 million in cap space, the number 1 pick. It's ridiculous.
And this is the same franchise that traded their second-round pick for Chase Claypool. And they ended up with the number 1 overall pick, so everything's fine and dandy now.
And that pick now is, I think, the 32nd pick.
The Steelers have the 32nd overall pick.
Which is actually, it's technically a second-round pick, but because the Dolphins don't have their pick, that's why it's 32nd now. So they essentially got a first-round pick for Chase Claypool.
Yeah, Yes. He's one of the 32 best players in the draft for Chase Claypool because the Texans beat the Colts today. Beat the Colts today.
All right, let me ask you this. Who is number one on the Cody Stutes? Like, this is the coach I'd want if I could pick one right now. Do you have a guy already?
DeMeco. DeMeco is number one for me, and here's why DeMeco's number one. Relatable to the players, is not cut from the same mold that Nick Caserio is cut from. He's a freaking legend for this franchise. He's a fast riser in the coaching circles, okay? DeMeco was playing or wasn't even coaching really 5 years ago. He's already the defensive coordinator of the number one defense in football. He's a fast riser. I love that. And I don't believe DeMeco has to hire like his guy on offense. Like, there's a bit of a brain drain that's gone on with Kyle Shanahan because Shanahan's had guys leave, and then those guys have taken people. And Shanahan's on offensive guys leave, and those guys have taken people. And now DeMeco's going to come in there, and he's going to pick the 12th best Shanahan guy. I don't think he has to do that. Now, I'm excited if he does. The Shanahan offense is awesome. I'd love to see it. I'm excited if he does that. But it wouldn't shock me if DeMeco Ryans is the type of guy that walks in and says, help me find an offensive coordinator. Who's the best name? Should we get Frank Reich? Like, if you told me DeMeco Ryans is the head coach and Frank Reich's the offensive coordinator, sign me up. I'm in. Let's go to work. Now, Frank Reich may follow Jonathan Gannon wherever he goes because Gannon coached for Reich in Indianapolis. But you can write a big enough check and make Frank Reich give up on Jonathan Gannon. DeMeco's my number one, okay? He's my number one. I don't want to give up the first for Sean Payton. Harbaugh's a situational guy. And I think there's got to be just kind of the right situation. I also don't think it's totally crazy that Harbaugh would try to sell you on not taking a young guy. I think he might want an older guy initially with a young guy later. So I'm not totally sold on Harbaugh. DeMeco's my top guy. And then we can have a conversation about who's number two. DeMeco's my top guy. Make him say no. And you know what? If he doesn't want to coach for you, if these rumors, these baseless rumors and innuendo are true that he doesn't want to coach for the Texans, then make him say no publicly. Ask to interview him and have him turn you down. And then move on and have it be done. Because I would rather that happen. I'd rather you ask and be told no than to never ask.
Yeah. Aaron Wilson reported that he's not even being considered as a candidate because of the lawsuit back when he was a player. So if you can't get
time and money heals everything. It's been a few years since that, and you could that $10 million he wanted, you can find a way to put it in his new contract.
Here's my fear. The Caserio factor in all this. Is Nick going to go outside his comfort zone with his head coach? Like, DeMeco Ryans doesn't seem like a Caserio guy. Harbaugh's a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. Harbaugh's not coming here to work with Caserio, so you can forget that.
And neither is Sean Payton, for the record.
No, I don't think but Payton at least, like, if Payton wants to come here, I'd say, see you, Nick. Bye. Because the statement read, Cal McNair will oversee with Caserio. So if they speak to Payton and Sean's like, look, I'd come here. I like the situation, but this Caserio guy, he's got to go. See you later, Nick. Bye-bye. Well, I'll take my chances with Sean Payton developing, hopefully Bryce Young or whoever the quarterback is that Sean Payton wants. It's tough, though, because I wonder, my fear, Cody, they're going to end up with Jonathan Gannon, and we're going to be saying to ourselves, if your whole plan all along was eventually to get back to Gannon, why didn't you just hire him last year? Because then Gannon would have been on board with tanking this game today. Lovie Smith was not going to tank this game today. And honestly, even if he wasn't, this is where Nick Caserio steps in and says, okay, well, guess what? You have to start Jeff Driscoll today. I'm in charge of you, and you have to start Driscoll today, or Brandon Cooks can't play. Like, Brandon Cooks quit on this team. They stripped away the captaincy. Me off. And this guy's out there catching the game-winning, the game-tying touchdown, and is a major reason why this team no longer has the first pick.
Nobody won more this year than Brandon Cooks. We don't even know, like they didn't even fine him. That wasn't even, like, if they'd fined him, or like, they excused him for that week. They sat Justin Reed for a week last year. They sat Desmond King for a week last year. Zach Cunningham, he kind of deserved these. A malcontent. He didn't want to, but like the way they treated Zach Cunningham and got him out of here, and the way they treated Brandon Cooks, from the guys basically did the same thing. And I would argue Cooks was worse.
He's a captain.
He went on Twitter and said he was going to tell all the secrets.
That's right. He was going to air out the organization's laundry. And then when he's asked about it, he didn't say anything. He's a coward. I mean, typical. So frustrating, man.
Man.
This fan base deserved the number 1 pick. And I understand it's not a death sentence to get the number 2 pick, but it's not just about, oh, well, like the Bears aren't going to take a quarterback. Who cares? The biggest reason why you want the number 1 pick is so if a team calls you and offers you a king's ransom, maybe you could be the team that can move down. Or if you love a quarterback, you don't have to worry about a team jumping in front of you if it's like the Colts or someone who are picking right there and are in range to move up with Chicago at number 1 to get the guy. Or for all the Texans fans who don't want a quarterback because, oh, we're not a quarterback away, whatever the heck that means. Well, okay, if Nick Caserio agreed with you, then he can have his pick of any player he wants on the defensive side of the ball. Now, all of a sudden, you don't have that. So it's just like, it's not a death sentence. Number 2 is still obviously a great spot to be in for a rebuilding team that needs everything. But it's just, this team should have had the number 1 pick in the draft today, and they don't get it. And then Lovie Smith, the reason why they don't have it, gets fired as soon as they land back in Houston. Like, you can't make it up.
Okay. Do we think now just because – okay, let's back it up here. The Jonathan Gannon's the favorite as soon as somebody got fired. You know who the favorite or the name that got put out there the most as soon as David Culley got fired last year was? It's Gerard Mayo. They never even talked to him. They never even talked to Gerard Mayo last year.
So do you want Gerard Mayo this year?
Hell no. I don't even want him to talk to Gerard Mayo. The only Patriots coach I want would be Belichick. You want to be Patriots South? You want to be the Patriots South?
We do
Trade
not
for Belichick.
consider ourselves the Patriots South. But then it's like we bring in Belichick. It's like we do consider ourselves the Patriots South.
Yeah, but I'll live with being Patriots South if you got the number 2 overall pick and Bill Belichick. You know,
bring in Brady too. Why not?
Yeah, sure. Get the whole band back together. Wes Welker, you're on the coaching staff in Miami. Get him out of retirement. You know, Edelman said maybe he'll come back. Gronk's not doing anything. Get him out here.
Now that would get the people going in Houston.
Yeah, now we're talking. So I don't know that Gannon's this slam dunk thing. I'm not buying that Gannon's a slam dunk thing.
There's a certain media member that seems to imply he's pretty high up on the Caserio pecking order in this town.
Yeah, it's not a slam dunk, okay? He might end up being the coach. He might be the favorite. It's not a slam dunk. And here's why I don't believe it's a slam dunk. Cal McNair, in that statement, basically saying, I'm doing the interview and Caserio's sitting in the room with me.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that somebody in the past year plus has gotten to Cal McNair and explained to him, hey man, these guys are going to quit taking advantage of you. They're going to quit stealing money from you. Jack Easterby ain't here anymore. There's no more manipulation going on. I'm thinking Cal McNair is going to sit in those rooms with Nick Caserio, and I'm sure the rest of the McNair family is going to be there to an extent. From Cal's wife to Cal's mom, to other people important to the organization, Greg Grissom, the president, the marketing guy. Have everybody talk to the coach, because the coach is, yes, it's about the 53 guys and the 46 on game day and what it looks like, but the coach is going to be for 3 months the face of your organization. He's going to be the face, and then you're going to draft the new face with the number 2 overall pick. So for 3 months, that guy's going to have to get you calm about the draft, help you guide through it, and then get you excited about the season. So I think Cal's going to sit in those meetings, and whoever impresses Cal McNair the most is going to have a great shot. I'm not going to say he's going to have the job or have the best shot, but he's going to have a great shot. So as much as you got to roll into that meeting and impress Nick Caserio and make sure that you're getting the thumbs up from Caserio, you got to impress Cal McNair. It feels like he's more involved in the overall part of the search from start to finish than, say, last year when he jumped in at the end and was like, we probably shouldn't hire this McCown guy.
Well, if Caserio comes back to him and suggests McCown as a candidate again,
fired immediately.
Immediately. And I don't want to hear from Texans fans, well, you know, that was all Easterby a year ago, because I have it on pretty good authority that Nick was very much on board with that idea. So let's not act like it was only Jack Easterby why McCown was a candidate. So, like, I'm okay with Cal having, like, some influence over it. Like, sure, like, sit in the meeting, but ultimately, like, I keep hearing from some Texans fans, oh, well, Nick didn't hire Lovie. You know, he didn't hire Culley. You know, he just hired them because he was forced to, or no one else wanted this job. Well, that's no longer the case. Like, let Nick Caserio pick the coach, and as long as it's not Josh McCown, like, That's his guy. This is his last coach. Now show improvement like a functioning NFL team should be able to do this many years now into the Caserio tenure. When you have your draft picks, you have cap space. This has got to be a huge, we're taking a massive step forward as an organization type of offseason.
Here is something that is really important in the hiring process. Is Nick Caserio going to hire somebody that is intrinsically and unquestionably loyal to Nick Caserio? Because that's what I would do if I was Nick Caserio. Because the next person that gets fired is not the third head coach that Nick Caserio hires. It's Nick Caserio. If stuff doesn't look good, if it's not going well, if you're picking number 1 or number 2 again next year, guess who's not getting fired? Jonathan Gannon or Ben Johnson or Shane Steichen or DeMeco Ryans.
That's a mess, though, dude. That's the problem, right? No, but here's the problem with Caserio getting a third coach in 3 years. Say this team is god-awful again next year. So then this is the worst thing you could do as an NFL team, though. Then you fire the GM. The coach is still here on a different timeline than the GM that then gets brought in. It messes everything up. So it's like
he either hires a puppet and does everything a la Bill O'Brien, or he hires a guy that's going to fire him the next time something goes wrong.
It is a mess when this happens. So you got to hope to God, if you're a Texan fan, that Caserio just hires the right guy, because they're going to be at least 2 years together no matter what, because they're not going to fire another coach after just 1 year, and then Nick's not going to get the pick. So it's like Nick's going to get probably 2 more years now by going forward with him, barring like an unmitigated, like you're somehow the worst team in football again next year. Like barring that happening, Caserio's now going to get 2 more years with this head coach that he's about to pick, you would think. So they have to get it right. Otherwise, you're setting your franchise back yet another 2 years if he misses on this next coach.
Yeah. You got to nail this hire, man. It's got to be, or you at least have to feel good enough. Like if you hire a guy and it doesn't work, that's football. Okay. There've been guys that are supposed to work. Like Mike Zimmer was supposed to be more successful than he was in Minnesota. The Bill O'Brien was supposed to be more successful than he was in Houston. Like, you can hire guys and it doesn't work. But you know what's more likely to happen when you don't hire good coaches? It's not going to work, which is why David Culley didn't work, which is why Lovie Smith didn't work, which is why the Jim Tom Sulas and the Freddie Kitchens and the guys like that don't work, because they're unimpressive coaches. We went through it on the show this week, Jake. We did the shop at the top history, where if you played the shop at the top drinking game, you had alcohol poisoning at the end.
Future t-shirt coming in the Cody Stutes merch store. Shop at the top.
So shop at the top. We did the shop at the top thing. 49ers shopped at the top. They got Kyle Shanahan. The Jaguars shopped at the top. They got Doug Peterson. Like, shopping at the top works most of the time. And okay, Sean Payton doesn't want to come here because you feel like you got to keep Nick Caserio. But you don't have to. You don't have to. Jake Glazer let us know this morning, you don't have to keep Nick Caserio. All right. So Sean Payton won't come here, or Jim Harbaugh won't come here because of Nick Caserio. That's fine. Hire the best young coach. I mean, there's not an Andy Reid. There's not a Doug Peterson that you can realistically get. Like, yes, Sean Payton is that guy. Okay. But we've talked about how you can't get Sean Payton. And he's more expensive than Andy Reid ever was, or Peterson ever was, because he cost a draft pick too, or multiple draft picks. But you can get the best young guy, pay him a bunch of money, let him hire a staff, give him a couple years to see where he's at. And if through a couple of years it doesn't look any good, and Nick Caserio's team, he hadn't drafted a bunch of good players, bing, bang, boom, everybody's out of there. And in 2 years, you hire a new GM and a new coach.
You have to get this right. That goes without saying. I would prefer an offensive-minded coach, given where this team is going with the quarterback spot. Now, look, if you get DeMeco Ryans, great. Just hire the best guy. But if you could hire the best guy who also happens to be an offensive-minded head coach, I feel like that is best-case scenario for the Texans, given the likelihood they're drafting a quarterback with the second overall pick.
Our guy Julian brings up an interesting question here. Is there a chance Cal doesn't like who Nick is interviewing and he fires Nick the next few days or week from now?
Yeah, I think it's possible. If he suggests Josh McCown, see you later, Nick. Bye-bye.
It would not be shocking to have a statement come out, say, 10 days from now, the Houston Texans and general manager Nick Caserio are parting ways due to a difference of the future of the organization. They write Nick a check, make him go away, new general manager in here, new head coach in here. And then it gets really interesting, because you could do a whole DeMeco Adam Peters thing. Adam Peters is one of the front office guys in San Francisco who's super, super well thought of in the coaching community or in the scouting community. So that's a guy that you could talk to. You could talk to some of the guys who've worked under, Howie Roseman and bring in that guy and say Shane Steichen. I'm not trying to bring in anybody from the Lions front office or people don't have to have worked together to have a job.
How about the Lions, by the way, Cody? You were down on Dan Campbell, and this guy just went 9-8 and knocked the Packers out of the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, great job by Dan Campbell, and I was highly critical of Dan Campbell's ability to hire a staff, and he fired his OC last year, Anthony Lynn. He took over play calling. He sucked at it, and then he went and hired he promoted Ben Johnson, and he turned into Ben Johnson's a head coach candidate now. Great job by Ben Johnson. You know what also happened? They drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 5th round, the same year the Texans drafted Nico Collins in the 3rd round. Great job, Nick. Great job. Amon-Ra St. Brown wasn't awesome or anything.
Yeah, he would be good.
He's like the best slot receiver in football.
He'd be pretty good.
They put him in there. Collinsworth is gushing over him. He's like, yeah, that Amon-Ra. This is a guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown, that can play anywhere on the field. It's like, thanks, Collinsworth. Can you stand up right now? Probably not.
Wait, did you see the quote Davis Mills had today after the game? They asked him, do you think you've done enough to be the quarterback next year? And he's like, hey, I think I had, a season. I put a lot on tape. I know it's not up to me, but, I think I could be the guy here. And I just started laughing when I saw that quote.
Yeah. So are we sure the question wasn't are you going to be the Roughnecks quarterback? Yeah, I've done enough to be the Houston Roughnecks quarterback.
I'm still not over that 4th and 20 conversion. It doesn't make any sense how that happened. They could not move the ball all year until that drive.
4th and 12 to Cooks on the sideline, and then 4th and 20 where it's just this is basically a Hail Mary.
Yeah,
and then the two. At that point, the Colts are like, screw it. If these guys want to win, they can win the game.
They didn't even play defense on the last play.
They weren't even close to Jordan Akins.
No, they left them wide open.
Also, sidebar, Jordan Akins is with this franchise. The general manager assesses this franchise, lets Jordan Akins leave. Nobody's as good as Jordan Akins, and Jordan Akins comes back and is on the practice squad and then ultimately on the roster, finishes the year as the best tight end on the roster. Although Quintiriano had some nice plays today. Sitting there screaming at him. I'm like, fumble.
He did a pretty good job.
I said, good throw. I said, good throw on 9 Davis Mills passes this year. One of them was the interception after the pick six. I said, great throw on 3 Davis Mills passes. One of them was the pick six today. It's like, great throw. Great. My neighbors probably thought I was the craziest person in the world. Great throw.
It was why. So I was at a bar watching this, and the Texans fans that were at this bar, it was so funny as the Colts are engineering this comeback. They're screaming, they're yelling, they're all excited. And then when the Texans won, the only person that was yelling in excitement was this one Bears fan that was there just yelling, cheering. So the Bears fan that was watching this game was cheering for the Texans to win. And the Texans fans that were with at the bar, they were rooting for the Colts. It was just a bizarre scene today. I can't imagine the emotions of a fan having to go through this today. But it's crazy, man. And then Lovie Smith lands at 7:45 back in Houston, and he's out of a job by 9 o'clock. Unbelievable.
Man, they really they really drove back to the stadium and said, don't go to your office first. Go to Cal's office first.
What do you think Cal was like when he sat in his? Do you think Cal was sitting in one of those big fancy chairs and he kind of did the spin around with his feet up on the desk and be like, "Lovey, you're out of here."
So you see it on Hard Knocks sometimes. Some coaches have the little coffee table and the couch chairs, and they kind of have the little sit close to them heart to heart, man, you did a good job, but we got to let you go. And then basically every time in any piece of media I've ever seen someone who's very unhappy with the job someone's done, it's big fancy desk, chair in front of it, and you're fired. So I'm assuming it was big fancy desk, chair in front of it. I hope it was that.
And then Cal called down to the social media team. He's like, all right, we told him. You can fire off a tweet.
Was Lovie out of the building before they tweeted it?
Before the thank you Lovie tweet. I just can't believe they thanked him. The entire fan base wants to strangle the guy, and the Texans are sending out a tweet thanking him after he cost them the #1 pick of the draft. It's unbelievable.
Okay. All right. A couple things here. Somebody asked about Eric Bieniemy. Is Eric Bieniemy ever getting a head coaching job?
No. Next, please.
No.
I can't. Look up Eric Bieniemy's arrest history, and then you might figure out why he's never been hired.
Yeah. Had an issue with a female security guard when he was at Colorado. They had some shady stuff going on when he's a coach at Colorado. He doesn't call the plays in Kansas City.
He also has Mahomes and Andy Reid. So if I'm going to look like everyone wants to kill the Texans because they didn't hire Bieniemy. It's like 13 other teams interviewed the guy over the last couple of years and no one's hired him. There's no reason for that.
I do think. How would you be interested in? It's going to be a weird name here, but we're going to talk about some weird freaking names in the next 20 days or so.
Hines Ward.
No. If DeMeco is the head coach, would you be interested in Matt Nagy running the offense?
Yeah, I want someone that has experience as a coordinator. If you're going to bring in a first-time head coach, I think a big mistake you can make is if the coaching staff does not have experience on it. So I would I would take Nagy in a second because Nagy at least has called plays before.
My number one OC for a defensive coach is Frank Reich.
Hey, I'll give you another name, by the way, because the Jets are talking about this because of Robert Saleh's connection to him. Gary Kubiak. Get him out of retirement. Let him be the
OC. Baby! Don't threaten me with a good time. I roll the fucking red carpet out for Gary Kubiak. Excuse my language if you got the kids watching, but Gary Kubiak, I'd do anything for Gary Kubiak to be the OC for this team.
Imagine
I'd let him be the head coach.
DeMeco the head coach. But if you got DeMeco as the head coach,
wow.
Kubiak for a couple of years as the OC to help Bryce Young develop in the NFL, that'd be awesome.
Okay. All right. We're thinking outside the box here. All right. Maybe Gary doesn't necessarily want the headset and want the microphone. Okay. Maybe he doesn't necessarily want to do that. Maybe he wants to just be the QB coach. Would you let his kid be the OC? He was the OC in Minnesota last year. Got a little experience. Gary's on the staff.
Even if he's just the senior assistant or whatever, he's just around, but he doesn't have a full just get that guy in the building and help your young quarterback. Everything the Texans do from this point forward, assuming they're going to take a quarterback second overall, has to be about supporting, whether it's Young, Stroud, hope to God it's not Levis, but it's got to be all about supporting whoever the quarterback is that they're going to take with that second pick.
I never would have thought about Gary Kubiak because I just thought Gary Kubiak's done coaching. If Gary Kubiak's not done coaching, get him in the organization.
No, there's talk about Robert Saleh calling him and making him the senior, the senior assistant for the J.
Saleh was an assistant on Kubiak's staff back in the day, yeah?
Saleh's first job in the NFL was on Kubiak's staff, I think, in 2005 with the Texans.
There you go. All right. So, man, I just wish there was a couple more names that were.
Who's the random name that Caserio is going to randomly interview that's going to freak the fan base out? Last year it was Hines Ward, obviously McCown, but are we going to get who's this year's I won't say McCown because McCown's one of one, but who's this year's Hines Ward? JJ Watt. Honestly, this fan base would be very excited if that was the case. JJ should have a role in the organization if he wants it, whatever it is.
I'd make him. I would make him special advisor to the general manager. I'm making a special advisor to the general manager. Here's the thing.
Someone wrote Jeff Saturday. That'd be amazing if the Texans just to get some intel on the Colts. They interviewed Jeff Saturday. That'd be hilarious.
You know who's a guy that I would be interested in having on the coaching staff in some way, shape, or form. I don't know exactly what position, but this would be a DeMeco thing, because they have a little bit of crossover there. Is TJ Yates? TJ Yates has been in Atlanta for a couple of years. He cut his teeth as a coach with the Texans a couple of times, 19 and 20. So quarterbacks coach, something like that, not an OC. The tough part is the top two candidates on most people's list, everybody's saying Gannon, and I think the fan base wants DeMeco. We got to find some offensive coordinator names. It's easier to think about the staff when it's Steichen or Ben Johnson or Ben Callahan or any of these other guys that coach offense. You're going to have to find offensive coordinator names, and that's going to be a hot market too.
Well,
because
you look at quarterback coach and like passing game coordinators for like OC names. If you hire an OC as your head coach, that's where you're looking. Like Brian Daboll brought Mike Kapka with him from the Kansas City Chiefs. He was Mahomes' QB coach.
Yeah. So I want a lot of offensive minds, but like if you hire a defensive coach, the top offensive mind in the building is the OC. So like you have a lot of control, but you also have a crappy offense. You're starting from if Shane Steichen leaves the Eagles, that's going to be one of the most attractive offensive coordinator jobs in all of football. You can't beat somebody out for an offensive coordinator if the Eagles want a guy. It's not easy to hire just an OC. Like it's much easier to have that offensive minded head coach and then let him fill in the staff and then just go find some crazy person to coach your defense.
No question. I mean, just please have a wide ranging search.
That's all I want.
I just don't need we don't need to waste time with we spent months about McCown and this nonsense with this search. The first sign that they actually are maybe going to take this seriously this year is that they got rid of Lovie right away. Last year they waited 5 days before they fired David Culley.
They treated David Culley so poorly, having him go out there to that press conference.
That was a joke.
That was so disrespectful to David Culley. And yes, I understand that later that week they wrote him what essentially is probably a $22 million paycheck to go away. But that was so disrespectful to have David Culley go out there when his job was basically up in the air.
Yeah, he's as of right now, I am still the Houston Texans head coach. It's like, come on, man. He's a nice guy. Like, what do you think David Culley was thinking when he found out tonight that Lovie Smith got fired? Do you think he felt? Did he have any emotion?
If you called David Culley right now, like if I knew David Culley and I called him right now, I believe there's a good chance, A, he's asleep. The second part would be, if he's awake, I think there's a great chance that he does not know Lovie Smith has been fired.
Does he not have an iPhone? Do you think he still has like a flip phone? You didn't get the Schefter alert?
I would think Mrs. Culley breaks the news to him tomorrow morning.
David Culley strikes me as the type of guy that likes like milk and cookies before bed. I have that visual.
He looks like the type of guy that wears like the long baggy shirt that like goes past his knees and wears the little funny hat to bed as well. Like I bet he's already shuffled off to bed. He's maybe read a little bit, maybe watched a YouTube video or two of a golf swings and stuff like that. He's a big golfer now. But yeah, all right, I have an outside the box name for you, and I'm going to make this joke before everybody else does. What about pairing Bryce Young with his college offensive coordinator? Oh, wait.
I at first I was like, wait, who's this OC? I was like, oh.
It's a pass for me.
Yep. That'd be a pass for me. I will say I like Bryce Young more, though, by the way, because anyone who could have success with O'Brien as your play caller, that says a lot to me. So that's why I like Bryce Young a lot.
You know who the totally just like random ass person that could talk to? And I brought the guy's name up, and I asked him. I don't know that I'd seriously consider him, but I'd talk to him. And by talking to him, you get a little insight on one of the draft prospects. I would talk to Ryan Day at Ohio State. I'd talk to him. Maybe you got to do it off the record because you don't want Ohio State to freak out. I'd talk to Ryan Day, or at least see if he wants to talk. You get a little info on CJ Stroud. Maybe it makes sense.
Well, you could talk to him when you're doing your homework on the quarterbacks anyway, which I'm sure they will. He's not leaving Ohio State, not yet anyway. But look, you brought him up before. I mean, if he was serious about being an NFL head coach, you at least interview him. There's no harm in talking to the guy.
Do you re-interview Brian Flores? I
would, because that actually makes the Texans look like a real organization if you talk to that guy. There's no harm in talking to him again.
Flores never fixed a thing that Dan Campbell seemingly has already fixed. Flores ran through coaching staffs. It was bad in Miami. Now, to the detriment of the Flores candidacy, Miami had a lot more positive vibes this year. Like if you remember, it was the Texans game where the sideline reporter was telling a story about how she talked to Tua. And he was like, yeah, I like coming to work now because the head coach and the staff didn't make me feel like I was damaged goods. Like Mike McDaniel makes me think like I'm the best thing since sliced bread. And like the previous staff drove me crazy. And it's like, I just don't know I'll be interested to see if anybody interviews Brian Flores because that lawsuit's still out there.
Yeah, I think the Texans are still like one of the members.
One of the named teams in it.
Yeah, so I don't think they'll interview him again. For optics wise, it'd be pretty funny though if they did, because then it's like, well, how could we have wronged you if we're giving you another interview here? But I don't think they'll do it.
They can't get re-added to the lawsuit. They're already in it.
Oh, I got a name. I see someone wrote it in the comments here. How about they put in a request for Steve Belichick just for the hell of it? We want to talk to Steve Belichick.
So
that could be this year's Heinz Ward. That'd be hilarious.
So apparently, see, that's one of the biggest things working against Gerard Mayo is he doesn't call the defense in New England, because apparently Steve calls the defense in New England. But we all know it's Belichick's defense, Bill's defense. So it's like you can't hire Steve. You can't talk to Steve Belichick. That's terrible. Yeah,
I think it was Chris Long. He did an interview like last year. I forget where. And they were asking about like what's it like how the Patriots defense like operates during his time in New England. He's like, oh, we had like Patricia was the defensive coordinator, but it was Belichick doing everything. Like Belichick does everything. That's why none of these guys work when they leave Belichick, because Belichick literally does everything for that organization.
I think it would not shock me if he's such a control freak that he's like bouncing around the whole time and just doing everything. Remember when David Culley said last year, his first day of training camp, he wanted to go hang out with the defense because he never hung out with the defense before.
That was such a great line. What was his line about how he was talking to like the training staff? Like he was just chopping up with the training staff at the beginning of practice. He's like, just wanted to see what they were doing at practice because he actually had some free time to see what they were up to for once.
Yeah. And then he was like, oh, better get this thing started.
David Culley, man. It's just like, think about how big of a disaster this whole Lovie Smith is, though. If they like just hired, let's say they hired Lovie 2 years ago, Lovie could have been fired after 2 years, and then you move on. This whole thing is so messy, and it essentially cost them the first pick in the draft because they were in such a need to move on from Culley because of how big of a disaster Culley was a year ago. So then, which Culley ends up leading them to Lovie, and then they got to they have to get rid of Lovie because it's obvious Lovie is not an NFL head coach in 2023, and here they are, no longer have the first pick, and now you're looking for your third coach in 3 years.
We talked about it on the show. Caserio never should have rushed out of Culley. The only reason he rushed out of Culley is the organization felt like they had to go get McCown. And the reason the organization felt like they had to go get McCown is because Jack Easterby convinced them to. Because McCown would have been a Jack Easterby ally. Jack Easterby's still employed if McCown was the head coach, by the way. I fully believe that.
Yeah, I mean, what has McCown done all year? Nothing. Like there was no reason to rush to get Josh McCown. Like he really did nothing to help his coaching resume in the last year since they interviewed him.
You know what is so annoying? I really enjoy watching McCown's YouTube channel on Underdog Fantasy. I enjoy his breakdowns of offense. He makes it easy to understand. He did a giant. If you like Ben Johnson, go find Josh McCown breaking down Ben Johnson's offense. I think it's like 30 minutes. It's worth your time. It gives you an in-depth look at Ben Johnson, how he uses players and stuff like that. McCown's an interesting guy. I just don't want him to be the head coach.
Maybe Caserio could be the head coach. Now that could be the out. What if the Caserio interviewed Caserio?
If Caserio was the head coach with Frank Reich as the offensive coordinator and somebody is the defensive coordinator.
Caserio loves to be on the headsets, as we know. Someone wrote in the comment section, let their record show the Texans had a better record with Caserio on the headsets. Hey, that is a fact.
I wonder if Caserio not being on the headsets this year was a 17 game I told you so.
Well, that's why he fired him so quickly tonight. He's like, oh, yeah, you don't want me on the headsets? Well, watch this.
He probably fired him on the headset in the middle of the game. Got on the headset, was like, listen here, Lovie, you're gone. You're out of here. Do whatever you want.
I can't believe this. But, I mean, it gives us plenty of things to talk about on the radio, so that's good.
All right, right now, today, it's 11:53 p.m., on January 8th, 2023, the Houston Texans select blank at blank pick. Who is it?
C.J. Stroud, quarterback, Ohio State, second pick in the draft.
If you tell me today to make a prediction, the Houston Texans select Bryce Young with the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft.
You think they move up a spot just to solidify him?
So here's the toughest part. And I talked about this before the game went final, and then after the game went final, it became very clear. We talked about it again on Twitter. The Colts going from 5 to 4 is humongous for them. Because if it's QB, defensive player, and the Bears have to go from 1 to 4, they still get one of the best defensive players. If Matt Eberflus and the general manager look at each other and say, we like Jalen Carter and Will Anderson. We think they're both awesome. And we know the Colts are trading up to take a quarterback. And we know the Texans have to take a quarterback. And then whatever the hell happens at 3 happens at 3. We get what's left, and we get a boatload of picks. Irsay's desperate. So unless the Colts give some sort of king's ransom or the Bears get infatuated with one of the defenders, then I think the Texans are going to have to trade up to number 1. And I don't know what that costs. It costs a first, I would think, at some point. I don't know if you can do the NBA thing where it's like the lesser of the 2 first.
No, I don't know if it would cost. You think it would cost maybe the Browns pick to move up 1 spot?
I wonder.
I don't think it would. What did it cost the Bears when they went from 3 to 2 when they took Trubisky? We got to look up the details of that trade.
Oh, man, I can tell you in a second.
Think about how stupid this is. Let's say it's only like a 3rd-round pick or whatever, or a 2nd-round pick. Like, you didn't have to do any of this if you just lost today. That's what's so stupid about this. And the reason why I said Stroud at 2 is because I could very easily see a team behind the Texans trading up with Chicago to number 1 now and taking Young if Young is deemed the top quarterback. I also think, knowing how Caserio has operated so far, the height of Bryce Young is going to be a deterrent for him. I'm not convinced that even if the Texans had the number 1 pick, they would definitely take, an undersized quarterback, because I think Nick Caserio is very much, you got to be a certain prototype if I'm going to take you with a certain amount of pick.
A 3rd and a 4th in the same draft and a 3rd the following year.
To move up 1 spot.
To move up from 3 to 2.
Yeah, that's just it's too much to give if you're the Texans.
But see, here's the thing. If the Colts are offering 2 future 1s, then you have to give up the Browns pick this year. If you feel strongly that you have to have Bryce Young.
Yeah, you better be right.
Then they go through the process and decide they don't have to have either of these guys, and whoever's there is there.
Anthony Richardson, welcome to town.
As long as it's not Will Levis, man. As long as it's not Will Levis.
Is Big Board Branham? Someone was writing about that earlier. Is Big Board Branham still on the Levis train?
Well, if he wants to be on Bad Take Island alone, he can be. He can be. That's going to be the pro day of all pro days. Will Levis's pro day. He might look in the Farmer's Almanac to see when it's going to rain, so he can have a pro day in the rain and everybody can just fawn all over him. That stupid video of him whipping the ball like 90 yards inside in like a dome or something.
Quick release.
That's a stupid video. Yeah, quick release of the other team. The quick release of the ground. He sucks.
Levis does kind of fit what Caserio would look for, though, as far as like the body type, the prototypical like quarterback that you would invest a top pick in. That would concern me.
Throw up blood. I will throw up blood if Will Levis is picked over CJ Stroud or Bryce Young.
So someone was writing this earlier. Stroud's agent is the same agent that repped Deshaun Watson, same quarterback coach, Quincy Avery, that worked with Deshaun Watson, same marketing guy that worked with Deshaun Watson. Would that play a part at all in whether or not Nick Caserio would want to take CJ Stroud?
I don't believe so. And the reason I would say that is because, to the best of our knowledge, David Mulligetta and the Houston Texans got along very well throughout the Deshaun saga. The Texans wrote their guy a check for $10 million to do nothing. Like, Joe Buck told us on Thursday Night Football, the third game of the season. Joe Buck told us on the 3rd game of the season that the Texans and Deshaun Watson's camp have an agreement. So, like, they played nice with David Mulligetta in the Deshaun Watson thing. So I would hope that Mulligetta has no ill feelings against them. Also, Easterby was one of the main reasons Watson wanted out, and he's not there anymore.
You would think it'd be fine. I mean, you just
It's the Texans, so of course we have to ask that question.
I know. Like, that's why you just want a normal. That's why it was okay if they just completely cleaned house and started over. It's like there's nothing that Nick Caserio has done where it's like, yep, he has proven he's a great GM. We need to now keep him. Like I'd be very weary about this organization getting it right based on how these last couple of years have gone. Like this is the closest they have ever been to being able to now potentially operate like a normal franchise. But like, I don't know, man. Just even like the way today ended, it's just like, you got to be kidding me. They couldn't even like tank properly so they could start clean with the number 1 pick going into this offseason.
It's not the most likely scenario. Is there any chance that Caserio plays chicken with the train? They hire a coach, whoever the coach is, whatever. They get the draft night. The Bears call and say, look, somebody's coming up for the pick. You better trade up for it. Caserio says no. And the Bears were bluffing. They take Will Anderson and boom, you have your pick of everybody.
Honestly, that's still probably the most likely scenario. The problem is we now have to go 109, whatever it is you said, 108 days, not knowing whether or not the Texans are going to be in that spot.
As of now, Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, Jake Glazer, any of the insiders that you follow, anytime their name pops up on your phone, it could be somebody trading for the number 1 overall pick. 108 days of torture till draft.
Yeah, that's why it would just like the most likely scenario is the Bears take a non-quarterback first overall, and then the Texans have their pick. But you can't guarantee it. And here's another scenario I will throw out that seems to be under-discussed. I don't think it is 100% lock that Chicago is not taking a QB. What if they go through this process here and they think Bryce Young or CJ Stroud is a better prospect than Justin Fields? The regime in Chicago did not draft Justin Fields, and Justin Fields could probably get them at least a first-round pick if they were to trade him. So they might look at it like, we didn't draft this guy. We were 32nd in passing this year. We don't think his running first style is sustainable big picture. What if we trade him and then we take our quarterback? Like, it's not I think it's unlikely because I think the fan base in Chicago really likes Fields, so that will buy the management more time to build around him. But I don't think it's impossible for the Bears to say, we like Stroud, we like Young, we're taking one of those guys, and we're going to trade Justin Fields. I don't think it's impossible for that to happen.
All right, if Fields is on the block, any interest in him?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'd rather get my own guy than trade for somebody else going into year 3, and then you got to decide after year 3 if you're going to pick up the 5th-year option. I don't know. I'm a little weary on just what Fields is as a thrower. I need to see more. I'd be a little uncomfortable.
I'd rather swing on Stroud and Young than Fields. And I'm out on Trey Lance. I don't want to. Don't send me Trey Lance trade proposals. He had another ankle surgery two weeks ago. Like, the guy's never healthy.
It's too risky. Trey Lance is a move that you like. If the Texans were in the spot they were in last year with these quarterbacks coming out, like, then you trade a 2nd-round pick for Trey Lance because you're going to see what you have in him. And then if he's not your guy, you take a quarterback next year. Like, that would have worked a year ago if like the situation was different. But when there's this many like top quarterbacks available and you're at number 2, you have to take a quarterback. You cannot be like, we're going to punt on it. We'll take a chance on Trey Lance and we'll worry about it next year.
Yeah. I don't want somebody's going to call our radio show, The Wheelhouse, ESPN 97.5, 92.5, weekdays, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central Time, ESPN 97.5 app, 97.5 FM, or 92.5 FM in your radio in Houston. Somebody's going to call or text us and be like, Trey Lance. Nope, his ankle's broken. He's a glass man. Cannot play quarterback for the Texans. Glass man. All right, big dog. What do you say we call this a wrap here?
Hold on, let's see if our buddy Landry is still going here. We gotta make sure we outlast him.
Oh, is this?
We're competing with him right now.
Is this the?
All right, we outlasted him. We're good. I think we gained a lot of his audience. We're now at 295. We were at like 279, so we had to outlast Landry Locker to make sure that we take over the Houston Texans YouTube conversation.
All right. 3's not a football number. I mean, it is because you get 3 points for a field goal, but you get 4 downs. Give me your top 4 coaches. Your top 4 coaches in order, 1 through 4.
All right. The first one is not going to happen, but he's the top guy, so I put him in there anyway. Sean Payton, 1. DeMeco Ryans, 2. Honestly, after watching the Lions tonight, maybe I'm nuts. Ben Johnson, 3. And who would be 4? I think this one will excite the fan base. Josh McCown. No, I'm just kidding. Number
You
4.
But you like Steichen, you like Callahan.
Yeah, I'm leaning offensive guys. So Shane Steichen, the Eagles OC,
Kellen
I guess would
Moore.
be 4. Kellen Moore. Yeah, I like Kellen Moore. I mean,
Kellen Moore's got a weird
they should
head.
interview. He does have a weird head. They should interview him.
Head.
There's no harm in interviewing him. I prefer offensive minded guy unless it's DeMeco, because I view him as just a great coaching candidate in general.
I got a hunch you can talk to Kellen Moore on Tuesday if you want. A week from tomorrow.
Ooh, you think the Cowboys are going to get knocked out?
They are limping into the playoffs right now, man. I don't think it's Kellen Moore's fault.
Also, Dan Quinn should be interviewed as well.
I'll be interested to see. Dan Quinn, to me, feels like we struck out on Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh, so we're hiring Dan Quinn.
But he's like he's a respectable name. Like, I know obviously it ended poorly in Atlanta, but like he went to a Super Bowl with that team. He's a really good coordinator. He seems like a guy that would be pretty good with a young team. Like, I feel like Dan Quinn would provide some stability and professionalism at that position.
I think there's a better than 50% chance that the Cowboys have told Dan Quinn he's the next coach if McCarthy gets fired. Because it seems like Peyton's not going to end up with them. And so I wonder if Quinn and or Moore would say, I'm not really interested, because I think when McCarthy gets fired, I'm getting a shot.
They really are like just like I see Hawk wrote their dog walking into the playoffs here. I mean, the Cowboys, you know what's interesting about the Cowboys? They either blow teams out with their A game, or they play an F game. Like they can't win with like a B- game or a C+ game. Like some good, like the Chiefs can come into NRG and they could play their C- game and find a way to win like that. Like the great teams could do that. We've seen that with the Bills at times this year as well. Like the Cowboys either look great or they don't win. So like I'd be terrified as a Cowboys fan. Like if they let Brady hang around next Monday night, if that game is close in the fourth quarter, Brady's putting together a drive and he's going to win that game. Like I'd be terrified as a Cowboys fan.
But Tom Brady's the next head coach. I'm kidding. All right, my top 4. I like DeMeco the most. I like Steichen, the OC in Philly. I like Gannon, the DC in Philly. And I like Kellen Moore. That's just, man, he's not even I wonder how much stuff he has to fix from Mike McCarthy every week too. Like I wonder what Kellen Moore would look like if he just had free reign. Like, because McCarthy's in there messing shit up.
He has so much talent though, which would be like a guy like Ben Johnson. I like because it's like you're doing it with Jared Goff and a bunch of guys nobody heard of until this year.
Yeah. You're much closer. Like that's a concern with Steichen too. They have the best offensive line in football, if not the best offensive line, the second best offensive line.
Yep.
They have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders. Their quarterback almost won the MVP, or is almost going to win, maybe going to win the MVP award. And then over in Dallas, you got a $100 million quarterback. You got 2 really good running backs. CeeDee Lamb is incredible. He's one of the 10 best receivers in football. They have like 5 tight ends that are decent. Like, there's a lot to like. So that's my 4. That's Jake's 4. Hey, there's going to be a lot of talk here. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Would appreciate it. Subscribe. Thanks for Jake for joining. You see it right there, the Jake Asman Show. You can catch him as well. So lots of fun stuff.
You got to like the video, everyone. People, Cody's YouTube is blowing up. To all you complaining, I don't want to see the Jet stuff. I just want Texan stuff. Well, Cody's the guy for that. So make sure you hit the subscribe button or hit that button and like the video, and it will help Cody's channel explode. I mean, he's already nearing 1,000 subscribers, which is wild. So keep up the good work, everybody. Yeah, we're gonna have funny thumbnails throughout the course. I got Vince McMahon on the thumbnail right now. You're fired. Maybe Cal likes video games. So like, I wonder if Cal likes wrestling too, and he just played Vince on his phone. It's like, here you go, Lovie. You're fired. Jose wrote 97.5. Yes, if you're in Houston, here's what we need you all to do. Houston has 3 sports radio stations. There's only one that is on the FM dial. There is only one that you can listen to on not 1 but 2 FM stations. 97.5, 92.5 FM. The show, The Wheelhouse. Cody's on it. I'm on it. BK's on it. Andrew's on it. 3 to 7, as you heard Cody say. 97.5. It helps our radio station, our show grow if you listen on radio.
We got clips on the YouTube, as I mentioned. We got a Twitch. You can get in there and mix it up in the comments live on Twitch. And we got an app. We have our own dedicated app that only plays our station. So you can get the ESPN 97.5 app as well. 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. If you're outside of the Houston area, it's Central Time. Jake's on it. I'm on it. You're here. I appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This is my first live. How about that? First live in the books.
You did it. You did it well, man. You got like 300 people watching. It's pretty good.
Well, we'll have to do this more often here. We'll have some fun here. Lots and lots of stuff to talk about. We have 108 days until the NFL draft. We have a coaching search in the meantime. After that, we have an offensive coordinator search or a defensive coordinator search, one of the two. It's going to be a blast. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have it covered here on the YouTube, on the radio station. It's great. Jake, thank you so much. Appreciate you jumping in. Again, thank you for everybody for tuning in today on the live stream. Appreciate the subscribe, the like. Go watch the other videos. We got some fun stuff on there, and we'll be doing this again soon here on the YouTube. The YouTube. God, I sound so old.